Hey, what the hell? It's already December. 2020 just started and it's already December? What the hell? What's up? It's the Culture Detective here investigating your favorite albums, and today I'm going to do my second video. I just spent pretty much 2 hours just writing the scripts for this album review video because, ladies and gentlemen, I am back for a mini album review video. It's been a long time since I've made one because I didn't see the need to make one because I have more free time, and I can review albums full length. But now that the year is suddenly over and I have a bunch of albums I want to talk about, you know what? Let's make the last mini albums review of 2020. So, starting off, we have Shawn Mendes' latest album, Wonder. Shawn Mendes, if you've been living under a rock, is a pop singer songwriter, and if you can't tell, he is a pretty generic one at that. He's not all that special or eccentric or anything. He's very friendly. He's very familiar. He sounds very familiar with the mainstream pop scenery, and his latest album is Wonder, of course, Wonder. And what would you expect from Shawn Mendes? Am I right? The title track is a pretty forgettable pop song, and it tries to build up to a very epic climax, but the faux melodramatic epicness of the climax of the track is just so generic. It's kind of a dud. And then we have the track Higher, where Shawn attempts a bit of dance pop with a groovy, subtle beat, which is not bad, but vocally and melodically he just sounds so tone deaf. Then we have the track 24 Hours, which is a pretty bland piano tune. And we also have the track Teach Me How to Love, which is an easygoing dance pop with a pretty nice instrumental and pretty nice beat. But that is only in comparison with the rest of this album, because in the grander scheme of things, it's still incredibly generic. And then, brace yourselves for the 4 worst tracks of the entire album, back to back to back to back. First of all, we have Call My Friends, where Shawn Mendes, or whoever's responsible for this anyways, put these blaring guitars on this track. That's so loud, and I don't mind blaring guitars when it's used appropriately, but on this little pop tune, it's so unnecessary and unfitting. It's grating to the ears. And then we have the track Dream, which is this tiny piano song, and then at the end we get these blaring, loud, swelling keys. Again, the same problem with the previous track. It's so noisy and loud, and it completely covers up Shawn's vocals, which is probably the only good thing going for his music. Song for number 1 is actually because I wrote No One like as the number, so I said number 1. Song for No One is this little tiny little cutesy guitar love song from a warm, handsome fellow like Shawn Mendes, and it's as bland as you would normally expect it to be. And then we have the track Monster, which is it has a really simple drum beat, and Justin Bieber is featured in this track, and his feature is so underwhelming. And then there are these ad-libs. Where did they come from? There are these ad-libs, and they're not like, oh, it's lit, straight up ad-libs. It's like ad-libs trying to complement Justin Bieber's very bland, forgettable performance, but the ad-libs themselves are so hilariously bad, it just makes it way worse. And also, a bulk of the track is not even dense at all. It's so scant, it's so empty. It's like a hollow shell where they're just singing on top of nothing. And we have lyrics about standing up against adversities, which is very overwritten, so there you go. The track 305 is instrumentally one of the better ones in the album. It's a driving pop jam, but the verses and the choruses are still mind-numbingly redundant. The track Always Been You is another, oh my god, this track is an abomination, where it starts off as a pretty little love song that's pretty harmless, and then once again we get these completely jarring blasts of instrumental, just blasting out of nowhere, and then just disappearing again, and then it shows up again, and then it disappears again, and it just blasts and blasts and blasts for the entire track, and it's incredibly annoying. However, we have one good song on the album, that is Pieces of You, which is a low-key, pop song with a nice charismatic chord progression, which is really nice, and I also really like the groovy beat of the track. But the album then ends off with two very bland and forgettable finishes, as always. Look Up at the Stars and Can't Imagine, which are two very boring generic endings. Of course, you want to end the album off with some slow burners, because that's what usually happens at the end of the albums, and it's just incredibly boring in this case. So yeah, Shawn Mendes Wonder, feeling a 3 on this thing, a strong 3 out of 10. My favorite track here is Pieces of You, and my least favorite is Always Been You. Of course, it's Always You. Second album I'm going to be talking about is the latest Aesop Rock album, Spirit World Field Guide. Aesop Rock is a rapper and a very, very amazing lyricist, one of the most underrated MCs of the 2010s, and he's back with this super long, big album that's over an hour long, 21 tracks, and it's a concept album about the spirit world. And he's known for his very slick and somewhat futuristic and eccentric production with the clear synths and crispy beats. Also, his flows and lyricism has always been fantastic, even on this album, though there are a lot of tracks on this album that just don't quite work out for me. So let's talk about the highlights first. The Gates is a pretty nice opening for the album with these bloopy, cutesy keyboards, and overall it's a really cool track. Dog at the Door has these really fun and slick descending guitars, which makes this track very contained and classy. Crystal Sword has a really cool warped beat, also very nice flows and lyrics about the mystical lore that this album has. And Jumpin' Coffin has a banger club beat to the track, also very self-flattering lyrics, making this track one of the more surprising and unlikely tracks on the entire album. And Button Masher is easily my least favorite track on the entire album. Yes, we have some nice sick bars about space fantasy, but the chorus is such a dud, and the instrumentals, which is heavily inspired by video games instrumentals, is very bland on this track for some reason. Pizza Alley also features some really tedious verses and choruses. The flow is meh, though I do enjoy the very dreamy synths. The track Gaze, or Gauze, is actually not bad, with its plucky melodies, DJ scratches, cool guitar riffs, and a nice tight flow. Boot Soup, though, it's also one of the more dud tracks here. We have a drum, a bass, horns, and eerie tones, and they all didn't fit together quite well. Coveralls is definitely a more direct and straightforward track with a chunky bass and squelchy keyboards, which is pretty nice. Holy Waterfall has these drilling descending keyboards and crispy drums, which also made the track quite enjoyable. For some reason, it just goes together really, really well. Sleeper Car is a track about journeying, getting lost, traveling, and topically, lyrically, it is incredibly interesting. And I really love it when, rappers don't just rap about, money, sex, drugs, party, I'm so famous, but, something as substantive and as insightful as Aesop Rock's great lyricism. I also really like the desolate organs in the intro of the track, but it just didn't show up any more again. The track Salt is fantastic. It has a dark bass, smart lyrics, and a really crisp chord change. And Attaboy is also pretty nice with its quirky, buzzy keyboards. Kodokushi is also a pretty catchy track where Aesop rock sort of combines hip-hop with new age ambient and funk, and Marble Cake is a pretty nice ending with incredibly cinematic instrumentals and lyrics about living life to the fullest. And then of course we have the other tracks at the end of the album which don't really quite work out. So yeah, again, it's a flawed album. It has a lot of dud tracks, and also some tracks here and there just don't work out instrumentally. But I still really love the concept, and Aesop Rock is still proven to be incredibly talented. I'm feeling a decent 7 on this album, and my favorite track here is probably Salt. If I can pick one, Salt. Yeah, Salt would be a good one, and my least favorite would probably be Button Masher. Third album I'm going to be talking about is the latest, the Koreatown Oddity album, Little Dominique's Nosebleed. I'm supposed to be having dinner right now, but I'm not because I'm so hardworking. So, the Koreatown Oddity is a West Coast LA Koreatown rapper, and yeah, this album, wow, such a great rap album. Of course, there are still, tracks here and there that are a little flawed, but overall, it's one of the most creative rap albums I've heard all year. I mean, of course, I just reviewed Aesop Rock's album, but still, that aside, this is an incredibly creatively produced. Narratively, it's amazing, and performance-wise, fantastic as well, front to back. Of course, Dominique is a jazz rap abstract rapper, and we have a very interesting cover art. And also on various tracks on the album, there are key changes and tempo changes and rhythm changes, skits in the middle of the track. Kind of reminds me of, honestly, Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly, because of all the key changes, tempo changes, the little skits here and there, the little funny bits, little smart moments. It's very creative, not gonna lie. The album opener, Looking Back from the Future, has a disorienting intro, and then these amazing, soft, funky, sweet guitars with vocal harmonies and very nice bars from Dominique. Little Dominique's Nosebleed Part 1 is an energetic, jazzy funk track with a really nice instrumental, grand horns as well, and his very rapid, fiery bars about childhood memories until at the very, very end where he experienced his first car crash. And going back to the album cover, he experienced 2 car crashes that would change his life, and this is the first one. That is why there is a part 2 to this track where he experiences his second car crash. The title track is a bit of an intermonologue, and he also sort of talks about how there's so much music in the industry now, how his grandma may be dropping a mixtape and she's like 80 or something. Then we have the track Chase the Spirit with its ghostly background vocals and devilish piano loops, and also a really nice vocal break in the second half. Ginka Biloba has these very tight bars and zany instrumentals which are very Mad Lib-esque, and this is a track where he sort of goes down a memory lane. Again, this album is actually very conceptual and very autobiographical, where he sort of talks about his childhood memories and how one car crash would lead to another car crash, and how it sort of impacted his own life because of how near death those experiences are. Weed in LA has these really nice bubbly sweet pianos, and he sort of commentates on the legalization of marijuana in LA and how it really didn't change his habits of smoking weed at all. And then he sort of rambles on and starts talking about the gentrification of the area. Part 2 of the title track here, it's a bit of a manic jazz rap, and it also leads up to the second car crash, and immediately afterwards we enter a dream state where everything gets very strange and fuzzy and disorienting, and once again, production-wise, very creative. A Bitch Once Told Me is the following track where the bitch says that life ain't that deep, and in this track, Dominique sort of argues against that. Like, no, I had 2 near-death experiences. life is pretty deep, and he sort of has an argument with that said bitch in the track, and it's hilarious, but also very personal as well. We have a bit of a skit in the middle, which is really creative, and I also really like the bright soul pianos and horns. And then we have No Llores, which has these dreamy operatic organs, a faint bass, and firework grainy beats. And he sort of put aside these feelings and starts pursuing materialism on this track. Attention Challenge is a really funny 6-minute long track about people doing things for attention. Fake titties for attention. Saying things, arguing on social media for attention. Be president for attention. And it's a really nice track with a socio-political commentary over a rusty beat, and also the Black Google skit at the end is hilarious. We have the track Kimchi, which has a really nice cold-blooded whistle instrumental, and also this track is about how, yeah, he's from Koreatown, but it's not really Koreatown, you know what I mean? The World's Smallest Violin is a song where he sort of sings about overcoming obstacles, and we also get these weary horns and somber violins, and also, again, great lyrics in this track. And the album ends off with a few tracks, 3 tracks. We All Want Something is a 3-minute long interlude kind of track with Anna Wise, and it's very spacey and production-wise a little messy. Lap of Luxury is a pretty conclusive ending where he sort of talks about how, you know what, at the end of the day, we must enjoy our lives. And instrumentally, it's just one of the blander ones, and then we have an outro, which is a little confusing, but still overall, absolutely magnificent album. This is like top 10 material. So yeah, feeling an 8 out of 10, strong 8 on this thing. My favorite track here is Little Dominique's Nosebleed Part 1, and my least favorite, We All Want Something. We all do. 4th album that I'm going to be talking about is the latest Toriena album, Pure Fire. And Toriena is a electronic music producer from Kyoto, Japan. And she makes hardcore breakbeats that are incredibly noisy and sonically violent. I heard the first track and I was hooked immediately because I've been craving some really sonically violent music for a long time. Of course, we have Death Grips, but Death Grips didn't put out anything this year, so I was really satisfied when I heard this project. It's short, but it's tight. It's tight, and it really lives up to its title, Pure Fire. It's pure fiery. It's on fire. It's flaming hot. It's burning. So we have the album opener, Break Me Down, with its incredibly distorted, heavy guitars, female vocals, intense, warping, slamming beats, and a very repetitive hook, break me down, break me down, break me down. And while sonically it is very interesting, I don't think there's one of the more stronger tracks on the album. Acid Cuff is definitely a highlight for me. We get these really quick super speed metallic beats, and also a grime rap, a British grime rap on top, sped up. Kind of sounds like slow tie, but I'm not sure. And also really love the scratchy tones of the instrumentals. Next up we have Butterfly Effect with its video game synths, hand claps, chopped drum and bass, and also just a very tight, noisy production. And it's amazing as well. The title track here, oh my gosh, we get these very bright, poppy keyboards, a banging beat, high speed, manic, chipmunk vocals, cycling quick drums, and these very deserty, rough synths that just scratches by once in a while. It's sonic mayhem, and it just sounds fantastic. Queen Bee is a little bit more scant instrumentally, but it still works really, really well. We get these really warped synth drops, and then these chopped up ada, and also these crazy shouts, hey, 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 in the back, and it's also a really fun track sonically. Angry Gal is it's really angry. It's really literally angry. I mean, we get a vocal sample of a woman yelling swearing throughout the entire track really built the fiery and intense bass for this track. The track Flashback is not one of the more impressive tracks here because it's very spacey, less structured, and the keyboards are very hyperspeed and noisy, as always. And then we have the track Getting Into a Pose, where she sort of dabbles into a bit of house music with a really nice, clean house beat. It's very groovy and nice, and it's a nice change up of pace. And then we get these chopped up sounds, of course, which is really nice. Though, I will say this, the album ended off a little bit weak with Kick It, which is a pretty standard track with a pretty generic breakbeat, muffled parts, beat drops, pretty standard. And we also have the track Shunt, which is easily the tamest, the blandest track on the entire album. It's so bland in comparison with any other tracks. It's a bit of a letdown. It's kind of anticlimactic, you know? But still, I think overall, a majority of the tracks on the album are very enjoyable, very violent, hurts my ears, and I love it, okay? I'm feeling an 8, light 8 on this thing. My favorite track is title track, least favorite, Shunt. Yay, 5 albums from Japan. I've given an 8, at least an 8 this year. At least an 8. The 5th album that I'm going to be talking about is the latest Bагдадский вор album, Колхида. And they are a post-hardcore band from Nizhny Novgorod, Russia. And this is their debut album. And while I think overall it's not bad, I still think they have a lot to work on because there isn't much in terms of versatility on this album, even though their performance is really passionate and amazing. Essentially, we get some post-hardcore, but the chords on this thing, and I'm kind of surprised because they're from Russia, and usually Russian music is pretty damn depressing, but the chords on this album, they're all really positive sounding, almost dreamlike. But still, I wouldn't say that all of the tracks are amazing. The album opener Son definitely sets the tone with its walls of bright shimmery guitars. And then the second track, Vi et tu noci, pardon my Russian, Vi et tu noci, has these offbeat vocal harmonies, and the instrumentals are kind of tame, not really all that memorable. We have the track Teni Zvezdi Kostri. And this track has a very sweet, nice bass lick, and we also have a pretty nice vocal break in the middle, though I wouldn't say it is all that great in the grander scheme of things. And we also have tracks like Krysolov and Izhbiani, which are 2 very regular and generic post-hardcore tracks in my opinion. The album ends off pretty nicely with Na Troich, which has these drony guitars, banging drums, and very, very aggravated screams, which is definitely the most well-performed track on the entire album in my opinion. And we also have the title track as the ending, which is structurally messy, but the guitars go all out and the performances are fantastic again as well. So they still have a lot to work on, but they're definitely promising. I'm feeling a strong 6 on this album. My favorite track here is Na Troich, and my least favorite is Vi et tu noci. The last album I'm going to be talking about is actually an EP, and I just learned that it's an EP. I thought it's a full album, honestly. But it's MaríaLlergo with Sanación. And she is a contemporary flamenco pop singer from Catalonia, from Barcelona, Spain to be exact. And yeah, I get it, she sounds like Rosalía. The kind of music she makes is also very, very derivative of Rosalia's music. So I wasn't really all that impressed going out of this album. You know, it just sounds like a Rosalía tribute album. Even though there are a couple of tracks that I like El Hombre de las Mil Lunas, which is a track that starts off with a soft wall of sounds, then it builds then it builds up to very expressive climactic vocals from her, which is really nice. El Pendulo has a very nice heavenly intro and then a slow clickety beat, which builds a mystic, eerie atmosphere. But the rest of the album is pretty regular and average in my opinion, especially for tracks like Nana del Mediterráneo, and also the album ending Me miras pero no me ves. Me miras pero no me ves. Two pretty regular tracks, exactly the kind of tracks you would expect to hear in a contemporary flamenco pop album in 2020. And in my opinion, the most forgettable track in the entire album is Soy Como del Oro, which is very spacey, very empty, and it just has no substance whatsoever, yet it drags on and on and on. So yeah, didn't come out of this album that impressed, honestly, even though she has a lot of potential, but she just sounds a lot like Rosalia, and I really hope that she would, develop her own style and, sort of be a little more eccentric and experimental. So yeah, my favorite, feeling a strong 5, probably, strong 5. My favorite track is El Hombre de las Mil Lunas, and my least favorite is Soy Como del Oro. So, have you listened to these 6 albums from 1 to 10? How much is it? 6? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 6 albums. I also listened to a couple other albums, but I didn't have time, so I didn't talk about them. But one of which is Give Me Monacos from the Coral to the Grave, which is a really sterile electronic album that's just not impressive at all. But yeah, have you listened to these 6 albums from 1 to 10? How much did you rate it? Like or like him, hate if you hate him, and subscribe if you want more. And thanks for watching. My voice is really raspy right now. I need to drink some water, and I need to have dinner. So gracias for watching.